Welcome to Blood, Guts, and Booze.
I'm Olivia.
And I'm Kendrah. This is a paranormal and true crime podcast here to frighten you and make you question the world that we live in. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into this. Listener discretion is advised, as these podcasts are not for the faint of heart, nor are they PG.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting week of Blood, Guts, and Booze. Whoop, whoop. Hope everyone is having a fantastic time. The weather's getting a little bit nicer. Saw some robins the other day.
And spring will be here very soon.
One downfall, though, is when the clocks jump forward an hour. I would like them better when they go back an hour, because you have an extra hour of sleep instead of losing an hour of sleep.
Yeah. I heard some rumor, though, that they're actually debating on getting rid of it around here completely.
That rumor has been going on in, like, Ontario, Quebec, and, like, some of the states underneath of us for a few years.
There is one city in the States, though, that doesn't do time change. Indianapolis, I think it is.
I thought it was Arizona.
Well, I want to say Indianapolis doesn't do it.
But I heard, I'm not quite sure, this is just what I've heard. I don't know if it is true, but I believe it is New York that isn't agreeing with it, because they want to keep it for farmers and shit.
Plus, there's, like, some sort of thing where it's, like, if you, like, didn't do it, then, like, the years would be, like... Or no, wait, that's leap years that I'm thinking of. Like, we would actually be, like, a certain, like, in a different year in a different month or whatever.
Oh, we would, yeah.
I think it's leap years, not time, not...
We would be, like, ahead a few years, realistically, yeah.
Anyways, what do you have for us?
Well...
Oh, before we go, speaking of spring, we do have an announcement to make.
We're taking a spring break.
Yes.
Well, spring break is this week for us in Ontario, for children.
Yes.
And not just that, but it's our vacation time. We deserve a break too. So we're taking a couple weeks off, and we will be back for April.
The beginning of April.
April 3rd, I believe.
Yes.
So it's just 2 weeks we won't be having episodes. Just so everyone's aware and not freaking out. We're still live, don't worry.
Yes.
We're not dead yet, but today I will be talking about a haunted cemetery where there is some death.
Well, I mean, I'd hope that there's at least some dead people in a cemetery.
And I'll definitely be walking around like the Walking Dead after the spring forward time change.
Fair enough.
Quick fun fact before I continue. Did you know the day after or the day of the time change is the highest rate for, like, heart attacks in people?
I did not, but I know that it also has a lot of, apparently, mental health issues. It, like, really affects people's mental health.
Especially where you lose an hour of sleep.
Yeah.
All right, so today I'm taking us to a brand new country that I don't think either of us have been to.
I have not been here, no.
So it's a first. So we are going to be going to La Recoleta Cemetery, and that is located in Buenos Aires, Argentina.
I do know how to say that one. Thank you, too.
I'm very tired right now. I have been awake since 4:30 this morning. Ooh, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 a.m.
That's only like I'm on 2 hours less than you.
Yeah.
Or more than you, I guess, because, like, I got up around 7. That's a lie. I got up at 7.
This cemetery was built in 1822 and was known as the first cemetery in the area. And with illnesses spreading like yellow fever around the area in the 1870s, the cemetery continued to be worked on and expanded.
Fair.
This cemetery contains over 6,000 graves.
That's a big-ass cemetery.
It is massive.
I'm excited to see the pictures of it.
Oh my god.
I hope that, like, one of your pictures shows the real, like, full aerial shot.
I'll try to find one, but before we put everything on the Instagram, because we do record, like, a few days in advance, so, I'll try my best, but I do have a handful, because some of the stuff that I'll be talking about today, I have pictures for, so, during the yellow fever, wealthier citizens would move to the Recoleta area during that pandemic, making this area specifically an extremely wealthy, rich part of the city. And that's what it was known for. And making it the prime spot for where wealthy people wanted their last place to be.
Their last resting place.
A lot of, like, leader figures, like political leaders, you know, stuff like people like that of higher importance tend to get buried there.
All right.
Yeah, a lot of political leaders from what I read. The cemetery was built almost like a city inside of another city.
Okay.
So it's kind of like not necessarily along the shoreline, but like it's real close to the shoreline. I'm pretty sure from what I saw on the map. But it's literally like right in the middle of this city. Mm-hmm. And there's paths, roads, walkways, gardeneries. Like it's
extravagant.
I was blown away by this. I do like art, so I was appreciating the work that was done to the cemetery, especially because I like creepy art too. So the long walkways are lined with graves, mausoleums, and sculpted statues.
What was that creepy art website that was like cool when we were in high school? It's gonna drive me nuts trying to think of it now. But there was like a website that was like a creepypasta, but like for art.
MySpace?
No. I'll think of it. But I feel like I was going to be like, oh, were you ever like into that?
Well, the artwork and the dedication that was put into the statues and mausoleums in the cemetery is phenomenal. Like it's so impressive how people can carve stuff out of a block of something. Especially marble.
Yes.
Like
Deviant Art. Mm-hmm. That's the website.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think I've been on it.
I feel like you'd like it.
I'll check it out. There are a lot of Greek columns throughout the cemetery, and most of the mausoleums are actually made from marble, right? Cool. Like pure marble, which is phenomenal. And this cemetery is actually one of the most stunning cemeteries, not only in Argentina, but the world. The entire area is just like a magnificent, eerie piece of artwork. It's stunning. It really is.
Cool.
Like I'm actually getting lost for words trying to describe how beautiful it is.
Which you usually don't think of when you're thinking cemetery. You think like desolate and creepy. You don't think of magnificent.
I think it's just because they respected their loved ones that have passed so much that they had to have. I get it. You'd want them. A lot of people have like extravagant tombstones and mausoleums for their past for their loved ones that have passed, right? Mm-hmm. I get it. You want them to have the best, right? Even in the afterlife. But people from all over the world have actually gone to this cemetery just to sculpt art in it for people, which is also really fascinating. So, like I said, this place is haunted. And I have a couple ghost stories that I'm going to talk about that are the legends in there. And then I got a few funny little stories for us.
Okay.
One of the most popular ghost legends in the cemetery is in 1902, a 19-year-old girl named Rufina Cambaceres.
Sure.
She had passed away from a mysterious illness. And after being unresponsive, the doctors had pronounced her dead. Her parents had built a beautiful tomb in the Recoleta cemetery. And the day that she was moved from her home to the cemetery, or I guess the
morgue.
Okay. There we go. Sorry, brain's only working like 80% right now. So the day that she was moved to the cemetery, there was a really nasty storm. So they had to reschedule her burial for the next day, and they had set her coffin in the cemetery's chapel for the evening.
Okay.
The next day, when staff had shown up, they noticed her coffin had been a little disturbed.
Oh, no.
And the lid was moved a little bit.
Oh, no.
So they had contacted her parents, and they wanted to come check out their daughter to make sure that if grave robbers were the ones that did this, that they didn't take anything. Mm-hmm. Because, people buried their loved ones with jewelry, possessions, stuff like that. And upon opening her coffin, they actually noticed she was covered in bruises and blood all over her.
What the fuck?
She had scratched and clawed the lid of the coffin overnight, because it turns out she wasn't actually dead. She had a rare medical condition that would comatose her, and that's why she was unresponsive.
Oh, shit. So was she dead then?
She was dead in the morning.
Oh, God.
I'm assuming because it would have only been, I'm assuming, a couple days at most that they had her from their house to the cemetery. I would assume. And I'm guessing she was comatose for 3, a couple days. Came to, next thing you know, she's in a coffin.
Buried alive.
I'm claustrophobic, so I'm getting clammy thinking about it.
Is that like one of your worst fears?
It is, yeah. I can't even, if I get a hoodie stuck, I panic. Like, it's bad. But I can imagine she probably had massive panic attack and probably ended up dying of a heart attack from panicking so bad.
She may have also run out of air sitting in a coffin.
That too. But remember, the lid was cracked a little bit, so she would have had a little bit, and it was a wooden coffin. Mm. It's not, a heavy-duty one. It also depends how nice the coffin is, too. If it's, a makeshift thing with, like, pieces of shit wood or, some
Fair.
2x4s. So, Rufina now has an entire mausoleum to herself on the corner of the 13th lot, and her spirit is sometimes seen walking out of the door.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Now, there is also a lady in white.
I love ladies in white.
I knew you would.
They're like my favorite ghost.
Well, a 15-year-old girl by the name of Luz Mara Garza Veloso. I am so sorry if that was wrong. She had passed in 1925 from leukemia. She was buried in a tomb that was on the main path of the cemetery.
Okay.
There is a statue of her on the tomb, and it is of her as a young girl deceased on a bed. And it's, again, chiseled out of marble.
Okay.
Her mother was seen sleeping at the feet of the statue for several months after she had passed.
That's sad.
It is sad.
I'm sad now.
I'm sad now. And so now there's two different stories that I read on how her ghost has been seen. So story 1 is boy meets girl and takes girl on date. Girl gets very cold and boy lends jacket to girl.
Okay.
And, after their date was over, next day he went to her house to go get his jacket back. Upon knocking on the door, girl's mother was like, she's dead. She's dead in the cemetery down the road, kind of thing.
Oh.
And he then heads to the cemetery where he finds his coat laying atop her grave.
Oh.
And it's said that he either ended his life or goes mad.
Oh.
Which is weird for a girl he went on one date with, but I'm not going to judge.
Maybe it's just the fact that you had a ghost.
Maybe.
Made you go crazy.
Maybe. Or maybe because you saw a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
We'll go with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Story 2 is, again, boy meets girl. They end up going for a walk through the cemetery, and she disappears into thin air. Boy is shook, realizing that the whole time she's a ghost. Ooh. We're spooky over here.
Okay.
So
We're the least scary people ever, honestly.
probably. Another ghost that is seen is of almost like a cemetery caretaker
Ooh.
figure. In 1910, David Alino, an Italian night shift worker of 29 years, he had started in 1881. Long time.
Yeah.
He was a keeper of the tombs and was working a night shift when he had ended his life.
Oh.
His only wish when he had passed was to be buried in the cemetery he worked at, which is the La Recoleta Cemetery. La Recoleta. La Recoleta. I am so sorry.
I mean, that's like fair if you dedicate your life to that place.
It's like,
Why
I'd
not?
best be fucking buried here, man.
Yeah, why not?
Well, David worked extremely hard and saved a lot of his money just so he could buy his own lot. And I feel like if you're putting 29 years of dedication, they should just be giving you a lot.
Mm-hmm. Get that written in your contract.
Mm-hmm. And this man even built his own grave.
Wow.
He was pretty dedicated to be put in this cemetery. He had even paid a sculptor from Geneva, Italy, which is where he was from, to sculpt him for the outside of his tomb.
Wow.
Because in this cemetery, I'm not joking when I say almost every single grave has a statue in front of it.
Huh.
It's impressive.
Cool.
So when he had everything good to go, so grave built, lot paid for, sculpture done, he ended his life.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes now the present workers will actually hear the jingles of his keys as if he's still doing rounds around the cemetery.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. So now I'm going to mention a couple deaths that had happened, and these people were buried in the cemetery.
Okay.
I just found their stories very interesting, and Some of them are more political leaders or wealthier people that I had mentioned tend to be buried in this cemetery. So the first story is Lilina Kroziati de Sazgazk. Sazgazk? Sazgazk? We're trying. We're sorry. Lilina was 26 and on her honeymoon in 1970. So she's from Argentina. And she had passed during an avalanche in Innsbruck, Austria.
Oh.
Right. Her distraught parents had a beautiful bronze sculpture made of her in her wedding dress. And when her lovely puppers had passed a few years later, they also had a bronze statue made of him beside her. And it almost looks like she's patting him on the head.
Aw.
Yeah. He was cremated and kind of like sprinkled into her tomb because you can't exactly just huck a dog into somebody's grave.
Mm-hmm.
And her tomb actually sits like a couple stories underground in an exact replica of her bedroom, size and everything. Mm-hmm. And it's also completed with Persian rugs and silk cushions.
That is crazy.
It is fancy.
Huh.
Like, these people went all out for their families in this cemetery. It was
just put me in a cardboard box and I'm good.
I told Nick I wanted like a Viking's death. Like, just huck
That's
me.
what Ron wants.
Just huck me into the water, light me up.
He wants a Viking's death. I want to be cremated, and half of my ashes can go into some grave plot, and the other half I want thrown off Port Burwell's pier.
I thought we discussed this in the Dark Disney episode, that we were just going to sprinkle your body at Disneyland. Or Disney World.
But not cremate me.
Yeah, just huck your pieces all over the place.
Yes.
So now we have a backup plan. If that one doesn't work, we'll just cremate you and huck you off Port Burwell.
Yes.
Sounds good. I'll even do it right from... Oh, wait, you said the pier.
Yeah.
Right? I was going to huck you at the lighthouse. Is there a lighthouse down there? No, I'm thinking of Port Stanley.
It does have I think it has maybe a lighthouse, but it's on a different part of it.
Ah. Oh, well.
But I like the pier. It's a happy place. It's my thinking spot. I go for a long drive down to Port Burwell and walk down to the end of the pier when I need, really reflective thinking.
I walk through cemeteries.
Well, that's because you're creepy.
I know.
Anywho, who do you have next?
So, the next, or I guess, it's a couple this time that I'll be talking about. Tiburcia Dominguez. She was married to a politician named Salvador M. de Carril. Carril. You know, his wife was quite the shopaholic.
Excellent. I love that movie.
She loved to spend a lot of his money in the towns. He got very upset with her and had made an ad in the paper basically blasting her, saying, you know what? She can pay for her own shit. I am no longer responsible paying for anything she buys anymore.
Well, damn.
Yeah. So his wife, in turn, was extremely embarrassed.
You would be.
And she never forgave him. But they continued to be married for another 30 years until Salvador's passed him. And when Tiburcia had passed, her will had stated that she was to be buried with her husband, but in a separate tomb.
Okay.
And that her statue, which is more of a bust, is to face the opposite way. And she does. She literally faces the opposite way as him.
That's the ultimate level of pettiness, where you're like, even when I die, I have
Fuck
to still
you.
be petty.
Yeah.
I
literally have LOL in my notes because I thought that was so funny.
That's like genius level of petty.
There's actually a very big Argentinian fighter that is buried in the cemetery as well.
Okay.
Louis Angel Firpo was a MMA UFC kind of fighter. I don't really know.
Boxing?
Yeah, he does that shit. He fights. And he was praised by Argentina. His tomb is located inside of the cemetery with a statue of him outside of it. I'm not gonna lie. At first, I didn't know he was a fighter because I hadn't read the story yet, and I just saw the picture of the statue, and I thought somebody just sculpted a statue of some guy in a house coat, and I was like, oh, that's weird.
It's because it's his boxing. He's a boxer.
Yeah.
I read ahead for a second, and it's boxing. He's a boxer.
There we go. You'd think I just wrote this a few hours ago that I'd remember it, but I don't. So he was best known for challenging Jack Dempsey in the 1923 World Heavyweight Championship. He had knocked Dempsey out of the ring, but he had come back with illegal help, rigged help. And there is also speculation over the speed that the referee was counting. So a lot of people say, yes, he was counting 1, 2, 3, 4. But it was probably more like 1,
Yep.
2, yeah. Very strung out. So Dempsey actually had won and continued to keep his title as World Heavyweight Champion, even though the match was accused by a lot of people for being rigged, a lot. But anyways, that's another, celebrity that's buried in the cemetery. I just have one more and then a couple fun facts. And then Kendrah can finish
Mr.
her part 2.
Oh, Theodore.
Ooh.
I don't know why I had to be creepy with that.
Evita Perrin, because I believe there was supposed to be a little above the E in her last name. Yeah. She was the first lady of Argentina in 1946 to 1952 when she had passed from cancer at 30 years old. Before she was buried, her husband Juan Perrin was overthrown by military, and he had fled the country, which is not really good for your political people. The people taken over wanted nothing to do with his family. They were like, fuck these people, because they just destroyed Argentina. So they had moved around and hid Eva's body for over 20 years. And
what the fuck?
Yeah. And they perfectly preserved her body, too, in the casket and everything.
What the fuck? Embalmed her or something?
Yeah. Her husband actually found her body in Milan, Italy, under a surname. In 1971, her husband finally made a deal with Argentina to bring her body back to Madrid. He had nowhere to put her coffin, so he kept it inside of his house and would often open it and look at her well-preserved body.
That's creepy.
Barron had returned to Argentina's leadership in 1973 and just left his wife's fucking body in Madrid.
What the fuck?
Yeah. This poor woman, just leave her be. So her husband who also at this point, by the way, had also remarried. It had been a while. Well, at this point, 71. So it's been 20 years. So he had remarried, right? He had passed from a heart attack within less than a year of returning back into power. His new wife, right? His new wife, I almost feel like that's karma. Mm-hmm. Right?
They got some pettiness. They got some karma. I am liking this.
His new wife took over leadership and had moved Eva to Argentina and finally put her with her husband.
Now, that is a good woman.
Well, she put her with, like, her ex-husband in his tomb. And
but,
stuff.
like, that is a good woman.
She still brought her back.
She found her dead husband's ex-wife and found her and buried her and put her to rest.
At least she gave her a burial.
Woman.
She at least gave her a burial. Yeah. It might not be, like, with her family. I'm sure she wanted to totally be buried with her ex-husband.
You go, new wife.
But I do give her props for that. But Eva's family was not happy about that. And, about being laid next to her ex-husband. And when his new wife had passed, they're all going to be there. I get it. And when Purin's wife lost, the next vote in, and got kicked out, the military returned Eva's body back to her family. So now she is actually buried in a tomb inside of the cemetery, like, with her family. Mm-hmm. And there's actually 2 stories below ground with 2 trap doors and 3 steel plates because they do not want her going anywhere this time.
Well, damn.
I'm like, bitch is fucking secured down there.
Yeah, they're like, no, she's here, just fucking leave her alone.
Well, exactly. Like, you let this poor woman's body and soul be so restless for, like, 25 years, almost.
She's gotta haunt that place. She's gotta.
Well, exactly. Also, depending on the person you ask in the country will determine whether or not Eva actually was a saint or a sinner. Some people claim she had slept her way up to the top to gain power and title, and that her and her husband had ruined the Argentina economy.
Okay.
Other people will say that she is extremely good people, that she actually helped the poor with certain programs that actually still help citizens today.
Okay.
I feel like that's just more like a weird little tidbit than anything else. So now I just have a couple fun facts before we get to Kendrah's case. The cemetery is actually known as one of the top 3 attractions in Buenos Aires, which is insane. Mm-hmm. Some people believe Rufina to actually be the lady in white, not the girl that I had actually spoke about, which could make sense if she's walking in and out of her tomb. Mm-hmm. I mean, she did have a pretty unpleasant death in the cemetery, so
yeah,
I get it. It is also known to be one of the most haunted cemeteries in Argentina.
Fair.
And there are a bunch of fucking local cats that just hang out everywhere, guarding and protecting everybody.
Nice.
And that's my case. And
nice.
So, like I said, we're gonna be posting some pictures. I got some. They're just absolutely stunning. I love sculptures. I love them, but they creep me out because I've watched Doctor Who, and I ain't about some weeping angels. I really want to go visit this cemetery because it looks absolutely stunning, and I love how hauntingly beautiful it is because I'm morbid like that. But yeah, and it looks really cool. Like, you can walk up and down the aisles. Apparently, it's recommended to have a tour guide when you're in there because it's very easy to get lost.
Huh. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. I did also see quickly that I didn't talk about it, but there was 2 other gravestones that I had seen that I thought looked really cool. One, this man had built with stones, like literal just stone pieces, and built it like that for his dad because he thought it was more meaningful if he built it instead of having somebody make it. And then the stone beside it is of an Irish military figure in Argentina, and they actually painted the whole thing green, and it's got like military carvings. And
That's cool.
It's absolutely, and it's like an emerald green, like your typical like St. Patty's green. It's
nice.
So cool. But yeah, that's my case. So now I'm excited to hear part 2 of Mr. Teddy Boy.
All right, everyone, let's continue the crazy case of Mr. Ted Bundy. Today I will be covering his arrest, trial, the Florida murders, pop culture, and trivia. So first we have to back up a bit from where we left off. Something I did forget to mention in the last episode is that on November 8th, 1974, Ted attempted to kidnap 18-year-old Carol DeRanch at the Fashion Place Mall in Murray, Utah. He pretended to be a police officer by the name of Officer Roseland. Police also had suspicions of a man named Ted with the same description from the murders of Janice Ott and Denise Nasland, the women who were taken 4 hours apart on the same beach.
Okay.
Other witnesses had also come forward with his description and said that the man called himself Ted, wore an arm sling, and drove a brown Volkswagen Beetle. 4 different people did contact the police with the name Ted Bundy after they released a description of him to the public. The people were an ex-girlfriend, Elizabeth, a close friend, a co-worker, and one of his professors. The police dismissed Ted Bundy, though, as a suspect because he seemed too, quote, clean-cut and had no adult record.
Just because you look like a good person, you obviously must be a good person.
He's just a clean-cut law student. It's fine. So on August 16th, 1975, around 2:30 a.m., Ted was arrested for the first time in Granger, Utah by a highway patrol officer. He failed to stop at a routine traffic stop, and when he saw the officer, he sped away. So after a bit of a chase, he eventually did pull over. The officer noticed that his front seat was missing and searched his vehicle. He found Ted's murder kit.
Oh.
It included a ski mask, handcuffs, rope, an ice pick, a crowbar, trash bags, and a number of other tools. Ted, of course, tried to explain his way out of it, saying they were just household items. The officer thankfully didn't fall for it, though, and remembered the kidnapping from November the year before, and the description of Ted's vehicle matched it. After his arrest, Ted's apartment was searched, but nothing significant was found, so naturally he was released. He was placed on 24-hour surveillance, though. Interestingly, police did find a brochure that advertised the Viewmount High School play in Bountiful, where Deborah Kent had disappeared.
Oh.
During this, police interviewed Elizabeth Klopfer, his girlfriend.
Yeah.
She admitted that before Ted moved to Utah, she found some odd items in his home and her apartment. This included a bag of plaster that you would make, like, casts out of, crutches, surgical gloves, a sack of women's clothing, and a meat cleaver that he never used to cook with.
Oh.
Ted sold his Volkswagen, but don't worry, investigators found the new owner. The Volkswagen Beetle was then...
By the way, we need to confiscate your brand new car because it's part of a murder case.
Yeah. The Volkswagen Beetle was then put under forensic testing. Hairs were found, and they matched to Karen Campbell, Melissa Smith, and Carol DeRanch. He was then placed in a lineup and identified by Carol as the man who pretended to be Officer Roseland.
Oh.
Ted was then charged with aggravated kidnapping and attempted criminal assault against Carol, and he was let out on a $15,000 bail, which Mommy and Daddy paid for.
Of course they did.
Police continued their surveillance on him. Ted went to trial in February 1976 and was found guilty in the kidnapping and assault of Carol. He was sentenced to 1 to 15 years on June 30th, 1976. That October, he was found hiding in the bushes in the prison grounds and was sent to solitary for several weeks. That same month, he was charged with the murder of Karen Campbell. He was then transferred to Aspen for the trial. He chose to represent himself.
Because he's a silly goose.
Which meant that he was able to be unshackled and not handcuffed. Not silly, smart.
Well, yeah, but I just meant, like, representing yourself.
In June 1977, he asked if he could visit the law library located in the courthouse so that he could do research for his case. He was given permission, and while in the library, he jumped out of a second-story window and escaped, hurting his ankle doing this. Which, I mean, a lot of people know that he did this escape.
Yes. Because they do portray it in, like, that Zac Efron movie, and then in documentaries.
Yes. He decided to head towards the mountains, and after a few days, depending on which source I was finding, it was either 5, 6, or 8 days. So I don't know.
Somewhere
6 seemed to be the most common number.
about a week.
But he was found and captured. He was placed back in custody, and on June 15th, 1977, he was charged with escape, burglary, and felony theft. By December, he was ready to escape again. He had managed to create a hole in the ceiling of his cell.
We Shawshanked it.
Yeah, he also lost weight so that he would be able to fit through it. And I feel like this is the part that people get mixed up because they think that this escape and the timeline after it is after his courthouse escape. But they're actually 2 separate escapes. So on December 30th, 1977, Ted stacked books in his bed so that it would appear that he was in bed sleeping. He then crawled through the hole in his ceiling and navigated his way through the crawl space. He then dropped into the chief jailer's apartment, who happened to be out for the night.
That was fucking lucky.
Stole his clothes and escaped.
Can you imagine the chief jailer coming home and just being like, what the fuck? There's a hole in my ceiling.
Yeah, Ted had
finding out it led to the, his... Holy shit.
Well, Ted knew that it led to his apartment.
No, I mean, like, the jailer, when he walks in and he's like, oh, fuck, why is there a hole in my fucking ceiling?
But Ted had been planning it for a while, exploring the crawl space, so he had discovered that was the best and easiest way, so... So after he escaped, he stole a vehicle and drove east. The car broke down on Interstate 70, and a motorist gave him a ride to Vail. He then took a bus...
Sorry, I'm just laughing because a motorist gave him a ride and it's so random.
So he stole a vehicle and drove east. The car broke down on Interstate 70. A motorist gave him a ride to Vail, like he was hitchhiking. He then took a bus to Denver. He then boarded a morning flight to Chicago, and he had already landed in Chicago by the time that the jail realized that he was even missing at noon the next day. Yeah. So from Chicago, Ted took a train to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and 5 days later, he stole a vehicle and drove to Atlanta. He then boarded another bus and arrived in Tallahassee, Florida. He did a lot of traveling.
Mm-hmm.
The most brutal of his killings, in my opinion, happened in Florida. So, a week after arriving in Florida on January 15th, 1978, while on the run after escaping prison, Ted broke into the Florida State University Chi Omega sorority house during the early morning. That's a mouthful. At around 2:45 a.m., he attacked 21-year-old Margaret Bowman while she was sleeping with a piece of firewood. He then used a nylon stocking to garrote her. Next, he went to the room of 20-year-old Lisa Levy. He beat her until she was unconscious, then strangled her. He tore off her nipple and bit her butt, leaving a teeth impression. And lastly, he sexually assaulted her with a bottle.
Ooh.
He then moved on to the next room, next door, where Kathy Kleiner and Karen Chandler were. He broke Kathy's jaw and lacerated her shoulder. Karen received a concussion, broken jaw, broken fingers, and some of her teeth were knocked out.
Holy
and
shit.
all of that happened within 15 minutes.
Well, I went from 0 to 100 real fucking fast.
I mean, he wasn't able to kill for a very long time at this point. He wasn't able to have his release that he'd been having. So it blew up. Afterwards, he fled and broke into the apartment of another student, Cheryl Thomas. She survived the attack, but suffered a dislocated shoulder, a broken jaw, her skull was fractured in 5 places, and she was left permanently deaf.
Wow.
Yes, this is all in one night. And then by February 9th, he committed his last known murder. He abducted 12-year-old Kimberly Leach outside of her school in Lake City. Her body was found about 7 weeks later. Bundy had raped her and killed her by lacerations to her neck.
Oh, she was so little. She just started her life.
Yeah. On February 12th, Bundy stole a car and drove back to Tallahassee. 3 days later, around
1 a.m.?
I was going to say, what's 1? 1.
1 a.m., 1 p.m.?
It's in the middle of the night, so it must be 1 a.m. Okay. On February 12th, Bundy stole a car and he drove back to Tallahassee. 3 days later, around 1 a.m., he was pulled over for driving a stolen vehicle. In the vehicle were 3 sets of female Florida State University IDs, 21 stolen credit cards, a stolen television set, dark-rimmed non-prescription glasses, and a pair of plaid socks. There was a fight between the officer and Bundy, which basically Bundy kicked the officer's feet from underneath of him and then tried to make a run for it. The officer got a hold of him, and then they were fighting for his gun. The officer fired 2 warning shots, and eventually Bundy was placed under arrest. And the officer recalls hearing Ted from the back seat say, "I wish you had killed me." Little did this officer know, though, that he had Ted Bundy in his backseat. He didn't know. He just was like, "Oh, you have a stolen vehicle." Nah.
Just thought he arrested some guy for stealing a car.
Yeah, but at this point, Bundy was on the,
Warren and,
top
wanted.
Top America's most wanted list.
Mm-hmm.
He was, the public enemy number 1 at this point. Where they were like, "Give us Bundy." And he could have easily hid in Florida for years, but his urge to kill he couldn't suppress it any longer.
It was like a drug addiction for him. He was jonesing for it. He was itching for it. But I know he was on. He was an extremely. I mean, he killed so many fucking people. Holy fuck.
Yeah. His trial for the sorority murders was the first ever to be televised nationally in the United States. First trial. Again, Ted decided to represent himself as much as possible. He maintained his innocence, even when he was offered a plea deal. I think the biggest proof that they had was a match of Ted's tooth impression with the bite mark on the buttocks. And it took the jury less than 7 hours to find him guilty, and the judge then sentenced him to death. 6 months later, he was on trial for the murder of Kimberly Leach. He was found guilty again, this time just in less than about 8 hours. During this trial, he asked his current girlfriend and former Washington State DES coworker, Carol Ann Boone, to marry him. She was testifying on behalf of him as a character witness for the 3rd time, and because of an obscure Florida law, where and when he asked in front of the judge, they were legally married already. Just basically because he asked her in front of the judge during whatever, they were married. So Bundy was then sentenced for the third time to death by electrocution. In October 1981, Carol gave birth to a daughter and named Ted the father.
Has there ever been a DNA test on that?
You know, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know. In July 1984, he tried to escape again, but was caught and moved cells. In October 1984, Ted Bundy contacted Robert Keppel and offered to share his expertise in serial killer psychology in the ongoing hunt for the Green River Killer, Gary Ridgway. The task force interviewed Bundy, but Gary was not found for another 17 years. I just like to put that in there. Because I think it's really cool that he kind of helped them find another serial killer in a way.
Well, he probably was like, you know what? Before I go, I'm going to give you guys a small little manual on how a serial killer thinks. And this should help you catch him and future people.
Well, I know, I want to say that for this, it was something along the lines of, basically he told them that you will find him because he's going to keep revisiting the bodies like I did. And they were like, oh, okay, and then they kind of found him. But I want to say that he is also one of the serial killers that was actually interviewed and stuff for, like, Mindhunter, like, the beginning of, like, the profiling in the FBI and stuff.
Well, yeah, because a lot of the stuff that he had told them basically is, like, okay, so, like, characteristics of what makes a serial killer. So, like, revisiting the body, shit, like, you know, stuff like that. I think it was good that he told him that stuff.
But I mean, at the same time, too, anytime he talked like this, he never said it as, like, I did this. It was like, hypothetically, here's what might happen.
Oh, yeah.
He was so adamant that I didn't do it.
Yeah, he worded his words very carefully.
He was a smart man, in my opinion.
Oh, very smart man. Very smart.
So, in 1986, his first execution date was set. And this is when Bundy finally started to confess to his crimes and share things, along with what he did to the victims after murdering them. Basically, it wasn't until he faced death that he was like, okay, now I'll talk.
I feel like it's one thing to be sentenced to death, but I think when the time actually comes, you're just like, fuck, it's the fucking time.
It was to buy himself more time. He offered to basically keep talking and do all kinds of trials and things with all kinds of victims so that he would last longer. Mm-hmm. And basically all of the other victims just went, no, we're done. We know Ted did it. Goodbye. We're done. We don't want to do it.
They're like, nope, we don't want to fucking look at you anymore. Get the fuck out of here.
So, with learning basically what he did with them after murdering them, he would go back to the bodies, like I said, and he would lay down with them or perform sexual acts on them. He actually applied... What?
I like your little hand thing that you did when you went to cough. You're like... you just, like, rolled your hand. It was so cute.
Smiling hurts so much.
I get it.
I'm not grumpy. It's just smiling hurts.
I get it.
He actually applied makeup to Melissa Smith's face, and he even washed Laura Ames' hair. He decapitated approximately 12 of his victims and kept several of the heads in his apartment for a period of time before disposing of them.
Interesting.
It was clear that he wasn't getting out of it, so he just kept confessing, trying to get more time.
Yeah.
His admission of guilt did make one person very angry, though, Carol Ann Boone, who had truly, honestly believed that entire time that Ted was 100% innocent, and that all his confessions made it obvious that he had lied to her. So she took her daughter back to Washington, and refused to take his phone call on the morning of his execution. Because bitch be crazy.
I don't get how she didn't fucking clue in.
Because bitch be crazy. Them serial killer fangirls, like, I love me some Ted Bundy, but no way am I gonna go trying to marry
fuck
him.
Me. Marry me.
Yeah, no,
like,
no. You just fascinate me, sir. I do not want to love you.
It's like, man, you're interesting, but I'm not into you that way, man.
And I would never actually want to meet you. No. You're icky.
He's icky, but I'm not gonna lie. I'd probably meet him.
Maybe write a letter to like a P.O. box that doesn't have my real name on it. Because he's good at escaping. Anyways, on January 24th, 1989, Ted Bundy was strapped into the electric chair. He was pronounced dead at 7:16 a.m. He was cremated, and his ashes were scattered in an undisclosed location. There was actually people standing outside the prison with signs that said, like, burn, Bundy, burn.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a big thing.
It was. There was a lot of angry people outside. Like, angry, happy people. Like, they were angry about what he did, but happy that he was dead.
Yeah. So, 2 more kind of sections to go. Pop culture and trivia. So I'm going to go with pop culture first. He is extremely popular in pop culture. He's basically the serial killer that literally everyone has heard of.
Yeah.
There are at least 7 books about just him. The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule and The Phantom Prince, My Life with Ted Bundy by Elizabeth Kendall are likely the most known. He is also mentioned in hundreds of other true crime books. I got most of my information about him from the Jack Rosewood Serial Killer Encyclopedia. There are also several Ted Bundy movies. The Deliberate Stranger from 1986, Ted Bundy from 2002, The Stranger Beside Me from 2003, The Riverman from 2004, Bundy, An American Idol from 2008, The Capture of the Green River Killer from 2008, and probably the most well-known film about him, Zac Efron's 2019, Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile.
Yes, which we had mentioned a couple times in the last 2 episodes.
Yes. There was also 2 more last year that I was actually unaware of.
Oh, yeah.
No Man of God and Ted Bundy, American Boogeyman, where he's played by Chad fucking Michael Murray.
Wait. I did hear that Chad Michael Murray had played Ted Bundy in a movie, but I didn't think it was out yet. I didn't know it was already out.
Yeah, apparently it was made in 2021.
Okay, well, now we need to watch it.
Right?
I mean, I'm not overly that big of a fan of Chad Michael Murray. I just want to see how he is as Ted Bundy.
Especially coming after Zac Efron, because Zac Efron is perfect.
Well, he did a very good job at that.
Oh my god, yes.
A very good job.
And then did you notice he just kind of like disappeared after?
Yeah, he went to Australia. Almost died a few times on his show.
Oh, I didn't know he had a show.
Yeah, it's like Zac Efron in the Wild or something.
Oh, so that's where he went. Okay.
Yeah, he's somewhere down in Aussie, yeah.
Okay. There's also 5 shows about him. Ted Bundy, Devil in Disguise. Ted Bundy, An American Monster. Ted Bundy, What Happened. Ted Bundy, Falling for a Killer. And Conversations with a Killer, the Ted Bundy Tapes.
Oh.
Which is on Netflix.
Oh.
The last
I think
one.
I've seen that, yeah.
It came out around the same time as Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile. Lastly, there's 2 songs. Ted Just Admit It by Jane's Addiction.
Yes, I did know about that one.
A Lot of True Crime by Penelope Scott references Ted Bundy. And Eminem also references him multiple times in his music.
You know what? We've mentioned this artist before, Skinned, when you covered Michelle Carter. Remember how I had mentioned, because she did a song about her, and I had mentioned that she had done one about Columbine, Jim Jones. Mm-hmm. I'm actually surprised she hasn't done one about Ted Bundy.
Look it up. Maybe she has.
She just, who did she just recently do one about? Oh, she just recently did one about, Chris, oh, fuck. Fucking, what's his face? Buddy, you fucking...
What?
Yes, Chris Watts. She just did one about him, and she used, like, her real voice through almost all of it. Oh my god, she's got like an angelic voice.
I still haven't listened to her.
Oh my god.
So, lastly, I do have like a good little chunk of trivia here. So first, Ted's mugshot is one of the mugshots shown in the Criminal Minds intro.
Yep.
Ted's father's identity has never been confirmed.
I wish it had.
Other aliases Ted used include Chris Hagen, Kenneth Misner, Officer Roseland, Richard Burton, and Rolf Miller. Many of his victims resembled the woman who broke his heart in college, with long dark hair and attractive, parted in the middle.
Yes, I did know that.
Ted's mother actually refused to believe the charges for years, but eventually changed her opinion once Ted finally confessed, like Carol.
I get it, though. It's her kid. It's her kid. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
A quote of Bundy's about himself: "I'm the most cold-hearted son of a bitch you'll ever meet." Elizabeth once said that Ted used to get extremely upset with her if she would suggest changing or cutting her hair, as it was also long and parted in the middle. His second escape was funded by money smuggled in by Carol Ann Boone.
That doesn't surprise me.
Ted maintained his innocence until right up before his execution, when he began telling the truth in hopes of buying more time for himself. The judge who sentenced Bundy told him that he would have made a good lawyer, but he chose to go a different route. And two more. Bundy's 1968 Volkswagen Beetle was displayed in the lobby of the National Museum of Crime and Punishment in Washington, D.C., until its closure in 2015. It is now on display at the Alcatraz East Crime Museum in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I think I'd like to see that.
And I will end with a quote by Bundy. "You learn what you need to kill and take care of the details. It's like changing a tire. The first time, you're careful. By the 30th time, you can't remember where you left the lug wrench."
Oh, no. Well.
And that's it, guys. There's my Bundy. There is my favorite top 5. My favorite big 5. Ow.
Well, there was a few things in there, like in your trivia and stuff, that I didn't know about. For me, and I do listen. I've listened to a lot of stuff on Bundy and watched a lot of stuff. Yeah, I loved it. I thought that was a good. You did a great job.
Thank you. I feel like everyone in this industry has to at least do Bundy once. Like we have to at least just do it. We have to do it. It's like tradition.
I really wish they had done a DNA test to figure out who his dad was. I know they didn't have that back then, but I wish...
Well, they couldn't, because no one was a clear... there was no clear answer as to who to even test.
Well, you could have tested her dad.
Yes, but I mean...
And I'm also curious to know if... Because I know Carol had said that Ted was the father of their child, but I'm curious to know if he actually was, or if she was just saying it so she could, keep that 15 minutes kind of thing.
Yeah.
She does seem interesting, so...
From what I gathered, basically, is that she really is, like, her name is Rose Bundy. Let's see here. It was later confirmed by a DNA test. Rose Bundy is actually his daughter.
Damn, Daniel.
Could you imagine Ted Bundy being your father? That is crazy.
Not just Ted Bundy, just being a child of a serial killer or murderer in general, I feel like would be so traumatic.
I think it's worse, though, because, like, at least she never really knew the man. It's worse for BTK's kids, where they were like teenagers, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, by the way, Dad's a serial killer. He's fucking BTK.
Yeah.
Psych.
That kind of happened I was watching an episode of Evil Lives Here on Discovery Plus. I've been binging it lately because it's really fucking good.
It is a good show.
And I mentioned, who was it to you the other day that I had mentioned?
The arsonist.
No, not him. It was the guy where he was given his daughters basically drugged hot chocolate, and then later in life they found out that he was a serial killer because he had murdered 4 young girls. It was kind of the same thing. Like, her sister called and was like, have you seen the news? Because yeah, Dad's a serial killer.
Like, that would be really messed up.
How do you even respond to that? Yeah. Well, Rose Bundy, if you listen to us, contact us. We want to talk to you. You see, you have a beautiful name, and we would actually really love to meet you. You seem like a very lovely person.
Knowing nothing about her, you think she's lovely?
I just know. I have a feeling. With someone as evil as Ted Bundy making a spawn, I feel like karma would give him the most lovely person, like lovely child in the world. Somebody who wouldn't...
And, sorry for calling your mama a crazy bitch.
She's just interesting.
She a crazy bitch.
Anyways, I think that's all for this week.
And we
will talk to you guys in a couple weeks, in about 2 weeks, when our new episode comes out.
Have a nice spring break.
Nice spring break. Once again, a big shout out to all of our listeners for supporting us for the last year.
Yes.
We really do appreciate the fan base, the support. We do. We really love it. Once again, check out our store if you haven't. The link will be in the description of the episode, along with on our blog and social media if you need it. Yeah. That's all.
Yeah. Ta-ta for now.
Goodbye. See you in April.
Bye-bye.
Special thanks to Dylan Sears for the theme song and Sally Gunter for the cover art. Support us on Patreon and like, share, rate, and subscribe to us on all of our social media pages and your podcast streaming service. Do you have any personal stories or suggestions for the show? Email us at bloodgutsandbooze@gmail.com.